If you are listening to this right now, it is not accidental. You were not meant to hear this earlier. Only now, at this precise moment, does this message have permission to reach you. There is something about the night that changes how truth arrives. During the day, everything demands something from you. Your attention, your performance, your explanations. But at night, those demands loosen their grip. The world quiets just enough for something deeper to step forward. And that is why this found you now, not before. This message does not reach everyone. It reaches the ones who have been standing at an invisible edge, sensing that something is shifting but unable to explain it out loud. The ones who feel more than they show. The ones who learned how to stay quiet, observant, and inwardly strong because the noise never felt safe. If that's you, you already know, this moment feels different. You may have noticed it subtly. The way time feels heavier at night. The way your thoughts slow down, then suddenly become clearer. The way certain questions resurface only when the lights are low and the phone is face down beside you. Questions you don't ask during the day because they would disrupt the version of you that survives. This is not random. Awareness always arrives before change. And awareness almost always arrives in silence first. Right now, you are standing in a thin space between who you have been and who you are quietly becoming. Nothing dramatic has happened yet. No announcement. No external sign demanding your attention. Just a feeling. A pause. A sense that something is lining up beneath the surface. You weren't late. You weren't forgotten. You weren't overlooked. You were waiting for the exact moment when you could actually hear this. And the night made sure you were ready. Stay here. What comes next will explain why this timing matters more than you realize. When the world goes quiet, a different version of you steps forward. Not the one who explains themselves. Not the one who adapts to be understood. But the one who exists when no one is watching, no one is expecting anything, and nothing needs to be proven. This is the version of you that only comes alive at night. During the day, you move through routines. You respond. You manage. You survive. You do what needs to be done because life doesn't pause just because you're carrying more than you can name. But at night, survival loosens its grip. The armor comes off without you consciously deciding to remove it. And suddenly, you can feel again. You may have noticed how your emotions become more honest after dark. Thoughts you push away during the day rise naturally. Not to overwhelm you, but to be acknowledged. This is when your inner world stops performing and starts speaking in its own language. Images, memories, sensations. Quiet realizations that don't ask for logic, only presence. This night self is not weaker. It is truer. It remembers what the day-forced version of you has to forget to function. It remembers what you wanted before you learned how to settle. It remembers the moments that shaped you, not the ones you talk about, but the ones that changed how you move through the world. The disappointments that taught you caution. The silences that taught you depth. You may have felt this version of yourself sitting with you before. In the dim light. In the stillness between breaths. When you stare at the ceiling and feel both tired and awake at the same time. This is not overthinking. This is recognition. Your inner awareness is finally able to surface without interruption. And here is what matters most. This version of you has been paying attention. While the world only saw your composure, this night self was collecting truth. It noticed what drained you, what no longer fits, what you kept tolerating out of habit rather than alignment. It noticed the quiet cost of pretending things didn't affect you as deeply as they did. That awareness did not come to punish you. It came to prepare you. Because before any real shift happens, the honest self has to be acknowledged. Not fixed. Not rushed. Just seen. And tonight, it is closer to the surface than ever before. Stay with this feeling. The reason this part of you is awakening now will become clearer as you move forward. Something subtle has already begun to shift. You may not have a dramatic story to point to. No sudden ending. No explosive beginning. But beneath the surface of your routine, something familiar is loosening its grip. For a long time, it felt like you were moving in circles. The same emotional patterns. The same types of conversations. The same internal negotiations where you told yourself, it's fine. I can handle it. And you did handle it. Quietly, repeatedly, without asking for recognition. But repetition is not always stagnation. Sometimes it is pressure building in a sealed room. You may have felt the heaviness recently. Not sadness exactly. Not anxiety exactly. Just a weight. A sense that something in your life no longer fits the way it used to. Things you once tolerated now feel louder. Environments you adjusted to now feel tighter. Even certain connections feel slightly out of rhythm, like a song playing half a second off beat. This is not you becoming difficult. This is you becoming aligned. Growth rarely announces itself with excitement. More often, it begins with discomfort, with the quiet realization that you cannot go back to who you were, even if it would be easier, even if it would disturb fewer people, even if it would keep everything predictable. You may have caught yourself pulling back in small ways. Replying slower, observing more, saying less, protecting your energy without fully knowing why. That is not withdrawal. That is calibration. Your internal compass is adjusting, even if your external life has not caught up yet. The cycles that once felt permanent are thinning, not collapsing overnight, not disappearing dramatically, but softening, losing their emotional charge. You are reacting differently now. Not because you stopped caring, but because you started seeing. And once you see clearly, repetition loses its power. This is the stage most people misunderstand. It feels quiet, almost anticlimactic. But this is where momentum is born. Not in noise, but in awareness. Not in action, but in recognition. You are not stuck. You are between versions. And what feels like stillness right now is actually the space where old patterns are dissolving, making room for something you have not experienced before. Don't rush this part. The shift is already in motion, even if the evidence hasn't arrived yet. Tonight is not a warning. It is not a sign that something is about to go wrong. There is no danger hidden in this feeling, no message telling you to brace yourself for impact. This moment is quieter than that. What you are experiencing is an internal pivot, a gentle but decisive turn in how you relate to your own story. Nothing outside of you needs to change yet for this to matter. The shift begins where no one else can see it, inside the way you interpret what you've been carrying. For a long time, your inner narrative was built around endurance. How much could you handle? How long can you hold things together? How deeply you could feel without letting it spill outward. That narrative served you when survival was necessary. It helped you move through uncertainty without falling apart. But endurance is not meant to be permanent. Tonight marks the moment where that story loosens. Not because you failed, but because you no longer need it in the same way. There is a quiet realization forming now, a sense that your life does not have to be defined by constant self-management. You may feel it as a pause. A breath held just long enough to notice that you are tired of explaining yourself internally. Tired of justifying why things affect you. Tired of minimizing your own needs to keep everything else balanced. This is not collapse. This is recalibration. The inner voice that once pushed you to keep going at all costs is softening. In its place, another tone is emerging. One that asks different questions. Not, how do I get through this? But what actually supports me now? That question changes everything. Because once it is asked, even silently, the direction of your life begins to adjust. Not abruptly, not loudly, but intentionally. Choices start forming before decisions are made. Boundaries start taking shape before words are spoken. Tonight matters because this is the moment your inner world changes its posture. And when that happens, the outer world eventually follows. Without force, without struggle. Stay with this turning point. What comes next will show you how power begins quietly, not dramatically. Power does not arrive the way you were taught to recognize it. For someone like you, it does not look loud. It does not look confrontational. It does not demand attention. It begins in something much softer, boundaries that form quietly in the dark. You may have started to feel them already. A hesitation before saying yes. A pause before replying. A subtle tightening in your chest when something doesn't feel right anymore. That is not anxiety. That is awareness protecting you. For a long time, you believed strength meant accommodating, adjusting, absorbing. You became skilled at reading rooms, anticipating needs, and smoothing over tension before it escalated. And that ability kept you safe. It made you dependable. It made you valuable. But it also made you tired. Boundaries are not walls built out of resentment. They are doors with hinges. Doors you now have permission to open and close intentionally. The difference is subtle but life-changing. Instead of bracing yourself against everything, you begin choosing what is allowed to enter. You may have noticed a new instinct forming at night. A voice that says, "Not this time." A clarity that doesn't need to argue. It just knows. This is power in its most mature form. It does not explode. It does not threaten. It does not try to prove a point. It simply redirects your energy toward what nourishes instead of what drains. And the moment you start doing that, even in small ways, your entire trajectory shifts. Maybe it begins with not answering that late message. Maybe it begins with ending a conversation sooner than usual. Maybe it begins with admitting to yourself that something no longer aligns. These are small movements. But small movements, repeated, reshape a life. You were never meant to carry everything. You were meant to choose. And tonight, you are closer than ever to understanding that your energy is not a resource to be spent recklessly. It is something sacred, something directional, something that, when guarded with gentleness, begins attracting different outcomes. This will feel unfamiliar at first. But unfamiliar does not mean wrong. It means you are stepping into a version of yourself that no longer negotiates your own worth. And that is where the pressure you've been carrying begins to change. The pressure you've been carrying has been building for longer than you admit. Not loudly, not dramatically, just steadily. Like air filling a room with no open windows. You told yourself you were fine. You adapted. You endured. You kept your composure even when internally you felt stretched thin. And because nothing visibly collapsed, you assumed the weight was yours to manage indefinitely. But pressure has a ceiling. There comes a point where it can no longer increase. It must either break you or transform you. And what you're feeling right now is not breaking. It's conversion. The heaviness is shifting form. You may have sensed this recently. The exhaustion feels different. Not hopeless. Not desperate. Just done. Like your system is no longer willing to operate at that level of strain. The same triggers don't hit as hard. The same fears don't echo as loudly. It's as if something inside you quietly decided, enough. That decision didn't happen consciously. It happened because you survived the hardest part already. You've been through the overthinking, the second-guessing, the nights where silence felt louder than noise, the moments where you questioned your direction, your value, your timing. And even when no one else saw it, you carried that weight with remarkable steadiness. Now, the peak has passed. Pressure transforms into clarity when it reaches its limit. It forces you to see what is sustainable and what is not. It reveals where you were overextending. It highlights where you were accepting less than you deserve simply because it felt familiar. You are no longer in the phase of accumulation. You are in the phase of release. That release may not look dramatic. It may feel like subtle detachment, like you're stepping half a pace back from situations that once consumed you, like you're observing instead of absorbing. This is not numbness. It is relief beginning to take shape. And relief often arrives quietly, almost unnoticeably, because you've grown so used to tension that ease feels unfamiliar at first. But it's there, in the way your breathing steadies, in the way your mind doesn't spiral as quickly, in the way you're no longer fighting everything internally. The hardest stretch is behind you, even if the evidence hasn't fully appeared yet. What you're feeling now is the space after impact, the moment when you realize you're still standing. And from here, something stronger begins to rise. Hope is returning, but not in the way it used to. Before, hope felt fragile. It depended on outcomes, on people changing, on circumstances aligning quickly enough to prove that your patience was worth it. And every time those things didn't happen, hope felt like something that betrayed you. So you lowered your expectations. You told yourself not to expect too much, not to imagine too far ahead, not to trust possibilities that hadn't shown proof yet. That wasn't a weakness. That was self-protection. But something has evolved inside you. The hope that is rising now does not feel loud or naive. It doesn't rush to paint everything in bright colors.
It is steadier than that.
Quieter. It doesn't need guarantees. It doesn't even need immediate evidence. It feels more like trust. You may have noticed it in small moments. A thought that says, maybe this is leading somewhere better. A calmness that appears without a clear reason. A subtle sense that your story is not stuck, it's unfolding. This kind of hope is earned. It is built from surviving disappointment without losing your depth, from enduring silence without losing your voice, from walking through uncertainty without abandoning yourself. It doesn't rely on the world to behave perfectly. It relies on you knowing you can handle what comes. That changes everything. Because when hope no longer depends on outcomes, it becomes resilient. It becomes internal. It becomes something no one can easily take from you. You're not hoping blindly anymore. You are hoping wisely.
There is strength in that.
A grounded strength that doesn't shout. It simply stands. And you can feel it forming beneath your surface, even if you haven't put it into words yet. This is why the heaviness has started to lift. Not because everything outside is fixed, but because something inside you stabilized. And when hope stabilizes, direction follows. What comes next is not about chasing something new. It is about allowing what aligns to meet you where you are. Healing is happening quietly, almost imperceptibly. It is not a dramatic awakening with fireworks or sudden revelations. It is the slow, steady untangling of what no longer serves you, the subtle realignment of your energy, your choices, and the way you allow life to enter your space. You may have felt exhaustion linger longer than usual. That fatigue, that heaviness was not a failure. It was your body, mind, and spirit releasing what had been compressed for too long. Old patterns. Old expectations. Old ways of showing up that no longer fit the person you are becoming. Each breath, each pause, each moment of stillness is part of this gentle dismantling. Healing creates the future in ways you cannot yet see. Every quiet choice to protect your energy. Every moment you let go instead of forcing control. Every time you honor your own truth instead of bending for approval. These small acts ripple outward. They shift the trajectory of your relationships, your opportunities, and the life that is being drawn to you. Alignment is not a destination. It is the unfolding recognition that the world will meet you differently when you meet yourself fully. When you stop negotiating your worth and start prioritizing your presence, the universe begins to arrange circumstances in subtle, profound ways. Opportunities that once passed unnoticed will appear. Connections that once felt strained will ease. And most importantly, your own sense of peace will deepen. Gentleness is returning. Not because everything outside you has changed, but because inside, you are learning to move with your rhythm instead of against it. The inner tension is softening. The resistance is fading. And hope, stronger, steadier hope, is taking root. You are exactly where you need to be. The night has guided you here. The shift you felt stirring earlier has begun to solidify. And though the road ahead is still unfolding, you now have the awareness, the resilience, and the trust to navigate it. This is not the end. It is a threshold. And what waits beyond it is aligned, expansive, and gentle, because you have become ready to receive it. And now, as you sit with this moment, know this. You are never late. You are never behind. Every pause, every night spent in silence, every moment of quiet observation has led you here, exactly where you needed to be. The shift you've been sensing, the subtle awakenings, the gentle recalibrations, they are all part of a path only you could walk. You are stronger than the pressure you've endured. You are wiser than the cycles you've survived. And you are more aligned than you realize. This is your invitation. Keep honoring the quiet moments. Keep listening to the subtle stirrings inside you. Protect your energy. Trust your instincts. Allow your inner hope to rise steadily, without urgency or force. Every small choice you make now shapes the life that is unfolding quietly but powerfully around you. If this message found you tonight, it is not by chance. It is a signal that you are ready for what comes next. And the universe, and your own resilience will continue to meet you here, where gentleness, clarity, and alignment converge. If this reached you, pause for a moment and reflect on what resonated most. Then, if you feel called, share this with someone else who needs to hear it, someone quietly carrying weight in the night. And remember, you can return here anytime. The guidance, the reassurance, and the calm clarity are always available when you need them most. You are ready, and the night is only just beginning to reveal your path.